Hello and welcome to another NFL Draft Scouting Report video from Pigskin Prodigies for the 2018 class. In today's installment, we'll be taking a look at Georgia linebacker Roquan Smith and assess his pro prospects. So, jumping right in, you look at his size. He is listed at 6'1", 225 pounds by the Georgia Athletics webpage, so he has less than ideal size for an NFL linebacker, and that can cause him some problems, as I will discuss a little bit later on in the video. But jumping into his actual traits and skills that he demonstrates on the field, he has good instincts. You see him around the ball seemingly on almost every play, so he's always around the ball. He seems to have good play recognition. You see him read keys and diagnose plays quickly, and he just attacks and makes a decision and goes. He's rarely indecisive, and he just seems to kind of anticipate plays well, and I guess recognize plays quickly, and it allows him to play without hesitation, I guess. Another thing that you see with Roquan Smith, he displays great discipline as a defender. You rarely see him bite hard on play action fakes and RPOs. It seems like he always kind of stays home. He gives respect to those actions and fakes, but he doesn't overcommit to them and take himself out of position to make a play. He stays home and remains disciplined, and it seems like he always knows his assignment. He really displays great awareness. He sees running backs trying to sneak out into the flat or on screens, things like that. Really displays great awareness and discipline, and you see that consistently throughout his film. Another thing that Roquan Smith does well on the mental side of the game, he makes the defensive calls for his team and helps his teammates get set and into position. I noticed this in the national championship, especially, or in the Rose Bowl, rather. It seemed like there was a lot of pre-snap motions and stuff, so Roquan did a nice job of helping his teammates kind of get set and made sure they knew what they were doing on the play. Okay, so getting into the biggest weakness of Roquan Smith's game, his block shedding and take-on skills are really inconsistent. I noticed this throughout his film. He really doesn't seem very strong at the point of attack. A lot of times he'll get driven backwards and struggle to defend runs downhill when he has to attack and defend against those inside runs. Really struggles to hold up there and take on blocks when he has to come downhill. And this was both against offensive linemen and tight ends. I noticed that if you look at the Alabama tape, for example, also Kentucky, and it's pretty consistent throughout, you see that he struggles to hold his ground when he's stacking blocks, and at times he'll struggle to disengage from blocks as well, especially when bigger, stronger defenders get their hands on him. He has a hard time usually discarding those blocks and freeing himself up to make a play. Although he did do a good job of shedding blocks against Auburn, but you really didn't see it consistently on his film this year. So that's the biggest concern that I have with Roquan, and it's the main reason why I think he'd be a better fit as a 4-3 will linebacker as opposed to a Mike linebacker, because you kind of take him out of the middle of the field and you prevent him from having to attack downhill and meet offensive linemen, and you put him in space more frequently and allow him to play to his strengths, where he can pursue to the edge, which he's very good at, and cover running backs. I think that would be the best way to utilize his talents. Although maybe he could play Mike linebacker if he had a really good defensive line that could keep him clean a lot of times, but I don't think it's ideal unless he can get a lot stronger and better at shedding blocks. So that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Roquan's biggest weakness. Now we'll get into more of the strengths of his game. I think that Roquan is an excellent tackler. You almost never see him miss a tackle. In fact, according to Pro Football Focus, this year, Roquan recorded 137 total tackles, and he was credited with just one missed tackle. So he's super reliable as a tackler. He's technically sound. He almost always breaks down and secures tackles. Comes to balance before he makes his tackle attempt, and he takes great pursuit angles to the ball carrier. That's one reason that he is such an effective tackler, because he never almost never overruns a play. He almost always takes a great angle to the ball carrier because he's very good at anticipating where he needs to run to meet them. Instead of running to where they are, he kind of anticipates where they will be when he gets there. So that's one of the reasons that Roquan is so successful and effective as a tackler. And then getting into kind of his athleticism, Roquan Smith has absolutely fantastic sideline-to-sideline range, and that's one reason why I think people will look at him as a Mike linebacker, because he can cover so much ground so quickly that putting him in the middle of the field, you can rely on him to chase plays down to either side of him. But as I said, his struggles with taking on blocks might cause teams to prefer him at a will linebacker possibly, or a 3-4 inside linebacker maybe, if you run a 3-4 scheme. But yeah, anyways, Roquan has great sideline-to-sideline range. I think at the combine he'll probably run in the 4.5s, something really fast. So don't worry about speed with him at all. He has great range. And also he has good agility as well. He does a nice job of flipping his hips and changing directions, and that allows him to cover a lot of ground as well, as along with his speed. Really makes him a great pursuit defender. Really excels at chasing plays down to the perimeter, and you almost never see running backs get by him when they're running on outside runs. When they try to bust it to the edge, like Roquan will track him down almost every time. And he's also, when he can just pursue to the edge, he's very good at avoiding blockers when he has more space to operate, and he can kind of just get around blockers by using his speed and his quickness. He can make them miss and just flat out beat them with speed to the edge, and it's hard for them to get a hand on him that way. So I think that would be why his best use would be as a will linebacker or a 3-4 inside linebacker, where he has another inside linebacker to help him out with taking on blocks. And then getting into his coverage ability, wasn't used a lot in man coverage from what I saw this year, but generally showed well in the few times that he was from what I saw. Mostly just covering swing routes out of the backfield. He had a nice rep against Oklahoma. I think it was against Rodney Anderson on a wheel route. Did a pretty good job of running with him down the sideline. And then I saw him on like a drag route in another game where he ran across the field with the tight end, covered him tightly, and then I think I saw him on like a seam route maybe with the tight end or another game. He did a good job covering in that situation as well. So he has the tools to be good in man coverage, I think, with his athleticism, and he's shown in a small sample size that he can do it. But he's mostly used in zone coverage, and he does a good job there. He seems to have a good feel for kind of space around him and all the moving parts behind him. Knows which like receiver to pick up if they cross into his zone, and does a good job of kind of feeling the movement around him. And I guess he also does a good job of reading the quarterback's eyes, and that kind of helps him to figure out where he needs to be on the field in zone coverage. So yeah, I think he shows well in zone coverage, and that's an important part of playing linebacker. So that's part of his game that kind of, I guess, rounds out his value and increases his value, I guess. And then lastly, the last strength of Roquan Smith, he's a very effective blitzer. He's very good at shooting the gaps, and he can blitz off the edge. He can with his speed. Doesn't have much power. He can't really like bull rush offensive linemen, but he can win with speed if they're late to like recognize him, or if they're just like, I don't know, like just late to recognize him, I guess. And they don't have like the foot quickness to kind of turn around and like engage him, then he can just wreak havoc as a blitzer. And his quickness is a lot of times just too much when he's blitzing up the gaps, up the middle. Just causes a lot of problems with his ability as a blitzer. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Roquan Smith. In terms of a grade, I have a first-round grade on him, a high first-round grade. Not quite elite, in my opinion, but pretty close. I think I have him an 87 out of 100 right now, which is a very good grade. Worth a top 15 pick, I believe. And I think that if you play him at 4-3 will linebacker, I think he'll make many Pro Bowls. I think that's a great fit for him. If you play him at middle linebacker, I think He could maybe be like a Deion Jones or like a Eric Kendricks, where if you have a good enough defensive line in front of him, that could work out maybe. But I really like him as a 4-3 will linebacker in the mold of Levante David, and that's my NFL comparison for him. Pretty complete linebacker. He can blitz, he can cover, and he can defend the run. But with his size, he struggles to take on blocks when he's coming downhill and he has to defend those inside runs. But other than that, if you keep him out of those situations as much as possible, he's going to be, I think, an excellent player for you. You just have to know his strengths and play to those, and I think he'll be a great pick for whoever selects him in the first round. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Roquan Smith. I thank you for listening and watching this video, and I hope that you stay tuned for future Scouting Report videos that I'll be coming out with shortly.